Yeah, thank you for so much for coming to talk to me because I would not normally even think about doing a podcast or be
Mhm,
interviewing people, but I'm suddenly in the territory of shame and how shame is showing up. So
mhm, mhm.
here I am.
Here you are.
Okay, so let me introduce you. Um, I'm so excited to be talking to Nicole Lewis Keeber today. Nicole is a groundbreaking business therapist and mindset coach who helps entrepreneurs understand how small t trauma can be showing up in their businesses. And she does this by shining the light on how we can unwittingly recreate early traumatic dynamics with our business. She's a licensed clinical social worker and a certified facilitator of Brene Brown's Dare to Lead program. Um, yeah, and Nicole, I also have slightly got some new questions, which are simplified.
That's totally fine. It's so funny when you said shines a light on, my ring light in front of me just went out like when you said that.
Oh,
I'm like, that's weird. She said shine the light and the light went bloop. I'm like,
what happened to the light? The light
I
has turned in, the light of consciousness is
don't
on.
know. It's weird. So my lighting's not great anymore, but hey, whatever.
Do you want to do anything?
No.
We can, are you sure?
To me, I am not a visual artist, so for me, lighting doesn't matter. It usually is just, let's just talk.
Let's just talk. Exactly. Okay, I've got to move my chat box so I can be looking at you and not at myself. Um, just getting my head around how all these things work. Yeah, so I totally loved. Well, also, I'm just so grateful also for someone else to be, of course, I'm so grateful for Brene Brown to be bringing shame to the table in such a big way, and so grateful to read your work as well, because I know there's so many people that don't even want to talk about it. And
Yeah, yeah. And that's why I feel so aligned with her in a lot of ways, is because she has been speaking about shame and the research around, like, bringing research to an emotional topic
yes,
for decades now, with people trying to shut it down and say, call it something different.
yeah.
And I have found the same with my work, at least initially, it's gotten better. So I really kind of have used her as a guidepost to just keep
Well,
calling it what it is.
I know, and I am so grateful even to hear you say that because I know, for example, I post a lot on Instagram and social media, and I see that a lot of people look at my posts, but very few people comment on them. And I know that's just because it's like, why would you go anywhere near that? It's like a hot potato.
Yeah, I have a dear friend, Patrice, who calls them turtle topics. Because
Okay.
people see it and they hear it and they resonate, but then like they poke their head back in and just kind of watch. Doesn't
I
mean
think
they're not there, they're not getting anything out of it, but they are certainly, kind of they withdraw a little bit to watch from a distance.
okay, great. Okay, fab. So, I wanted to thank you. That's funny. I can start using turtle emojis for myself. That's a nice one. Um, I do want to ask you how you, I guess I better go back to the beginning and say, how does, when you say shame, we talk about this word shame, and
Mhm.
just as a kind of frame for us to, so we're not talking about something that's not able to even how should we, how should we think about it in terms of our conversation today?
Yeah,
What
so
framework?
When in Brene's work and her research, they kind of, and I'm going to reference her a lot because it's
Yeah,
research based. I mean, my stuff is great and everything, and it's, it's research over a lifespan and over my body of work. But she has, is it quantitative or qualitative? I never can get that right. Like, she has this body of work and research. So, in her shame research, they distinguish shame as a difference between guilt. Like, they give these two ideas. So, like, shame is I'm bad, and guilt is, oh, I did something bad. So shame is a much more internal process. It's much more related to, maybe trauma, experiences where your value, your worth, your identity have been, bruised in some way. But shame really comes down to, is this experience happened? Like, I made a mistake at work, and the next thought is like, I'm worthless, as opposed to, oh, that was so stupid. Why did I do that? Or oh, I feel bad. I said something I didn't mean to. I probably should go talk with that person and say, I'm sorry. So there's kind of like the difference between guilt and shame. Shame is an internal process.
So thank you. So if I have something, for example, when I must have picked up this message somewhere along the line because I'm a visual artist, I love painting figures, but I somehow got a message early on that that wasn't okay, and I kept putting it down. Do you think that I mean, and I've kind of started calling it shame, but I don't know if it's shame or if it's good girl conditioning.
I think it is. I think if you think about the systems around us that kind of control how we're allowed to be in the world, the identities we're allowed to hold, the power we're allowed to reach for, the more disembodied we are, those systems better. And the more shame we have around our bodies, which is our agency, our bodies are they're our vehicle, right? They're like ours,
Yeah.
they're our agency in life. So, those ways of being socialized about the body, we should be ashamed of the body, like our body, needs to not be seen by people. Like all those are all conditioning and messagings from these external places that impact how we see ourselves. And so if you're out there creating art around the human body and in a full expression of it and from an authentic place, not what you think it's supposed to look like, of course the shame like the shame brigade's going to come in, because you got to get back in line.
Yeah. Yeah, I have heard that actually, and our genitals are our most shamed part of our body.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm. Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's not surprising. It's not
right. No, it's not. It's
so
not at all.
yeah. And how would what are the ways that you think that shame shows up then in our in our adult lives, our adult working lives? Because I wouldn't have identified as someone who was suffering from some shame a few years
Hmm.
ago, but now I see I've been massively impacted. And it was, yeah, I know that your work is specifically about how it shows up in our relationship with our businesses.
Yeah, I think shame and trauma are really connected. Whether it's a big what we call a big T trauma that happens that makes us feel unsafe in some way, or like those small macro, not macro, micro moments um, that tell you you're not good enough or that who you are is not okay. If you have enough of those, over your developmental stages in life, who you are and how you see yourself is going to change. And so when you go to work or start a business, you're still going to be deferring to the external, I call them the invisible they, who's telling you, well, you didn't do good enough, or you're not good enough, or that project wasn't perfect enough, or, you know, um, your business isn't making enough money, like all of those external messages, you really take them to heart and you internalize them because of those experiences that you had. You're not able to look at it and just say, well, I don't agree with you, or that's not true. We internalize it because the only reference point that we've had our whole lives and we've adapted around it because our nervous system is, well, I'm bad, so I need to fix it. Or I need to fix this entire company because I'm bad. So if I feel responsible for things that are not mine and even not within my wheelhouse. So, and that's what I saw a lot with my own business and with other people's businesses is that that internal shame, that internal feeling of like I'm not enough. They kept trying to fix that through their businesses, but it didn't ever work because they don't have another reference point for themselves. Their only reference point is like I'm bad, I'm not enough. I need to have, a successful business in order to feel good about myself. And regardless of the level of success that you get in your business, you're not able to see the fact that you're successful. So you're always striving for the next thing. So your sense of accomplishment is not yours. And I see that people who have careers and they're professional, I see it with artists, creatives, they're always business owners, entrepreneurs, we're always moving the goalpost because we don't have an internal reference point of what it means to be well and okay and satisfied and safe and having that agency over my own perspective of my work, my art, my business as opposed to the external they.
Wow, that's
So,
so huge.
and we don't know we're doing it.
Because I'm thinking that I'm hearing you say, and it's like, well, if we have that filter, we're going to apply that to everything.
Mhm, mhm. Yep.
Oh
Yeah,
my,
and it's one of and it's so interesting that you say that because it is a filter. It's a lived experience, it's a nervous system response, and it's a filter in which we see the world. And yet there's only a few little areas I think in our life where our culture and society has said like, "Oh yeah, okay, so you had some trauma in your childhood. That makes sense that it would affect your mental health. That makes sense that it would affect maybe your partner relationship." But they're just giving this like this little tiny bit of permission to own it there when actually it affects everything. Everything, your relationships, your body, your health, your business, your money, like all the things. But they keep it contained to this small little slice of where trauma and these experiences may impact you. No one's looking for trauma in their business. No one's looking for a shame response in their marketing. We're not doing that. So it's not our fault. We're not looking for that. No one allows us to make that intersection, that understanding, or recognize that intersection of where these experiences that we have come forward with us in all that we do, not just who we decide to marry or maybe whether we get depressed or anxious about something.
crazy. I'm taking that all in.
Mhm,
And when I reflect about, uh, how much I have been an artist who totally loves drawing the figure, painting the figure, but every time I started doing it, it kind of has happened a few times in my life. Um, I've had even just someone asking an innocent question, why are they naked? Why are they naked? Why do you always paint naked? Why are they naked is enough for me to feel that discomfort and shame and then to kind of put it down and go and paint something else.
mhm,
Um,
mhm. Yeah.
wow. So what is the way out of this crazy spiral?
I think it comes down to, first of all, is recognizing what it is. And, a lot of the work I do is around education, at least initially, about what trauma is and isn't, and and how shame shows up for us. In the Dare to Lead work, we talk about how shame shows up in organizations too. So I think education and a willingness to accept and understand that shame and trauma are in the room no matter where we are. And that, when I don't know about, you all, but in this country, the way I was raised in our cultural and societal kind of lens is that trauma is only big T, what we call big T trauma, which is violence or maybe catastrophic accident or, something big, PTSD from combat. That's really the
That's what
only,
I think of. That's what I think of. Yeah.
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 Yeah, and I always say, if I went out in the street and put a microphone in someone's face and said, "Tell me what trauma is," domestic violence, those type of things are what they would say. And that's true. And the majority of us are experiencing what I call small T trauma. Some people call it, developmental. Like everybody has different words for it. And there's a lot of debate about whether it's big or small, whether you should diminish it or not. But I like it because it feels manageable to call it small T or little T trauma, because what they are is these cumulative experiences that we've had in our life developmentally in those years that are important, where we felt unseen, unsafe, unheard. Our needs were not met in some way. Our emotional needs were not met in some way. Our autonomy of who we are authentically as a human being was shut down because of those societal norms and those, communal shame messages. And so when you have that experience enough time, they change who you are. They change how you see yourself. And I use the example in my book about the fact that I grew up with, a learning difference or disability. And when I was growing up in school, they didn't have any really modifications for that. There was not a lot of language around it. No one really knew what it was or how to help me. And so I spent from age 6 to almost age 18 in a school system that didn't know how to teach me. And so the only thing that I could do was internalize that I'm dumb, right? I'm stupid. They're fine. They know what they're doing. I'm the dumb one, as opposed to I learn differently. And if they were able to recognize this, be curious enough, then I could learn and get good grades and all the things that I did not do. But I internalized that. And so those experiences, just that one, for me, changed how I saw myself. It changed everything. It changed my nervous system. It changed my boundaries, all of that. And so that's just one example of what a small T trauma can be. Maybe you moved around a lot, maybe you were bullied, maybe you're a neurodiverse person in a neurotypical world. Um, it maybe you had a peer group that moved on one year and kind of left you behind. Like all of these experiences that a lot of people would just say, just buck it up, deal with it. That happens to everybody. They're important. Your nervous system does not care what you call it. It is still having that experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we don't know. We're not educated. We don't know what to call it. We have minimized it and diminished it. We've been put down. And so we internalize, we conform, um, and that impacts us in a lifetime. And I personally think that small T trauma is the runway to big T trauma. If you don't feel good about yourself or worthy, what are you going to do? You're going to put yourself in harm's way.
Yeah.
So I think educating people about shame, about what it means to be unclothed in whatever circumstance,
Yeah.
or owning the way that you learn, like all of those things are authentic to us, and they're valid, but they've been invalidated in so many ways that we internalize it and take that shame on, and that trauma changes everything for us.
Wow. That is huge. I love what you said, the shame and trauma in the room.
Hmm. Every
Yeah.
room. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why we need to call a thing a thing. Why Brene says it's shame, call it shame, and I say it's trauma, call it trauma. If we
Yeah.
call it burnout or stress, or all the things that people like to make to kind of wash it down and just kind of like distill it, not distill, like wash it out.
Yeah, I was thinking,
um
or even confusion, or I'm chaotic, or I don't know what I'm doing, or why do I
yeah.
keep changing my mind? Why do I pick it up and then put it down? Or what? Why can't I
Hmm.
figure out what I'm doing? Why can't
Hmm.
I? It's like,
Hmm.
what's wrong with me? Oh, okay.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
Probably should.
trauma. It's shame,
Trauma.
it's trauma. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's amazing because sometimes I look back and I think, what happened? But, I guess that's what was happening.
Hmm.
That's what was happening.
Yeah, and so when someone says, well, why are they naked, it's not this age Michelle
Yeah.
who, it is a younger version of you that
Yeah.
says, oh,
Oh,
we're not supposed to do that, or oh, like, okay, so this is still not okay. So the younger version of you is the one that is triggered by that and is the one that steps down or puts it away. It's not the older, more
no.
wise version of you. It's that younger part.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was thinking there's another thing that's come up when I'm drawing all these men, and it's about the power dynamics, and because I think there's got to be shame around all of that, shame
Hmm.
around money, and just I wonder if you could just speak to how these
Hmm.
things can show up.
Yeah. Tell me more about that process for you. I'm curious about that.
Well, for example, I kept wondering, like, why is this a big deal? Because I'm in the life drawing room. When I have my mod, so the men are modeling for me and sitting for me, I um am the one in charge. I'm the one in power. And actually, because I'm asking them, I have a request, would you be willing to sit for me? And by coming, they're saying yes. And then I do say to them, are you willing to sit over there while I stand over there and I'll be drawing and you'll be naked? And and then they say yes. And this guy, the last model, was sort of like talking about it out loud as he was realizing that he was absolutely powerless. And the only power he had would be to leave the room.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also taken me quite a long time to own the power because it's felt uncomfortable. And I've almost been like giving it away, like, letting the conversation at the beginning go on for an hour instead of, and it's like a 2.5 hour window that I organize
Hmm.
with them. And really I need to just, like this last week, I said to them, listen, I've allowed 20 minutes to talk and then I'd
Hmm.
like to start. And
Hmm.
that was me being much clearer about my power, but I don't know that I've necessarily been the most powerful one in the room before.
Yeah, and that makes sense when you think about how we've been socialized with, around power. So, I think that again, this is an evolution of what it means to be an artist the way you are. it was an evolution for me in my business. I didn't start out with great boundaries and understanding what the relationship with my business was like. I
What's
didn't
a
even know I was in a
boundary?
relationship. So, and I think sometimes, when you've been socialized, female in certain cultures, like we feel responsible for the caretaking and comfort of others. And so
Yeah,
we do give more. So you do give more space for it. And I think it takes time for us to recognize, like, this is my domain, this is my area, and they're here voluntarily. They can leave. I'm not holding them here. They can leave. They have agency, they have consent. We've talked this all through, but
yeah,
we feel so responsible, right? That we forget that that person also has agency to say yes or no to what's happening. And so I love hearing that you've kind of been on this journey of kind of starting to realize, like, okay, so you said yes to this. Like, I'm not holding you here. Yes, I have the expertise in the room and I can direct you, and that probably will make you feel more comfortable because you probably haven't done this before. So it is my role as the leader to guide you through this. It also is okay for me to say, let's talk a little bit about this, what feels good, what doesn't, consent, and then let's go.
exactly.
um, but yeah, like I think sometimes, and I tell my clients this all the time and business owners, I'm like, no, you're not forcing anyone to buy from you. Like you can be trauma conscious because I want you to be. And you have to recognize that that person also can say yes or no, and that that's fine. That there is no they out there that gets to tell you how to run your business. Like this is yours. You get to direct it the way that works for you. You get to have that. I say that all the time. Like you get to have that. You get to have a model that'll come in. You talk to them 10 minutes. You're like going. Like this is your project. You get to have
Let's
that.
start. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that consent piece gives the permission for me to go, okay, well, now I'm going to be, yeah, I'm going to, because I need to be in charge. It doesn't work if I'm not in charge. It's a mess.
No. And their nervous system, to be honest, needs you to
Yes.
be in charge because they're doing something vulnerable. So the clearer you can be about the process,
Yeah.
the more check-ins around consent along the way, the better.
Yeah.
Or even just to say, if at any point you decide that this is no longer comfortable or this is not for you, you can tell me. And then, like I think that if you can be clear, because
Yeah.
Brene says clear is kind, and give
Yeah.
consent and build that consent process into it, that is all you need to do as the leader of the room and the one with the power in that
Power.
room. Because
Yeah.
really, you both have the power,
Yes,
you really do.
exactly.
He
And
can leave, you
he
can
can
stop,
say,
they
I'm
can put
done.
clothes on.
Exactly. He can say, I'm done. I've had enough of this. This is not my jam.
Yeah, so you can be conscious of your role as the leader of that project and also know that, yes, there is the power differentials that we have learned based upon our conditioning and culture, and that person can leave. And you can shut it down too. So
Exactly. And I can say, I'm done. Yeah. Everyone
mhm,
can say, no, this
mhm,
doesn't feel good anymore.
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, what has been a surprise is that there seems to be this other transaction that goes on where when they are willing to come and and sit for me, that they get this gift of being seen,
Mhm,
which and then when there's a moment at the end where they see their drawings and they often go, wow, they can feel quite empowered by being seen.
mhm,
So I guess what's really exciting is it's a new sort of dynamics that's happening in the life drawing room between a model and an artist because traditionally there hasn't been any boundaries. Artists have slept with the models. Probably in
mhm.
the next day there was some feelings like I'm not sure. Oh, I don't
Yeah,
know. There just wasn't any boundaries.
yeah, of course.
So it feels completely different to do it with boundaries. And
Mhm,
then to get this gift of them saying that they feel so empowered by being seen. It's like, oh, I suppose we're talking about this is the new power paradigm that
mhm.
uh that I'm trying to, operate.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to Brene and some of the people that, her research was influenced by is that, well, right now, and traditionally, we've seen power over structures and power over dynamics, which is what we bring into our work, like the assumption that you, as the artist and the person who, is your model, that there's a power dynamic, that you're power over them, which is not true. there is a power to and power with that's happening in the room when you are clear, when you give consent, and there's boundaries, there's the expectation of like, this is how it's gonna work. And they can lean into their vulnerability because you've created a power with and power to. But our nervous systems are all waiting for the power over to
Oh,
happen to us in the room, in the studio, in the business, in the boardroom, because it's there. Not to say it's not there, but in moments where it doesn't really, you get to create the power dynamic. We're surprised when we see that happen, and that this is actually a power to and power with that I'm creating because I have the boundaries consent. And I'm aware of like what my triggers might be. And I'm understanding that this person, probably has had some experiences of shame. And when we can name that and understand that, we are able then to create the power to and power with, which is what you're doing.
oh, thank you so much. Because I've been like, why is this such a big deal for me? Because it was power over.
Mhm,
That's how it used to be. So I was like,
mhm,
what does this mean exactly? I'm in charge.
mhm,
That mean I have power over? Okay, so
mhm.
the power to, who's the power to and who's the power with? Is it me? Do I have,
It's you and your model.
yeah, exactly. So
Yep.
it's power, I have the power to, and they have the power with.
It's just a different way to say it. Like
Okay,
it's power, as opposed to power over, like I'm
yes,
here, it's
yes,
power us to. Like it's power
yes,
to and with. Like it's a reciprocal exchange of power, either back and forth or at the same time. It's clear, it's been identified, consent is in the room, boundaries of what's okay and what's not okay have been discussed. There's been time at the beginning to create the container, right,
oh,
for what that power looks like. And that's how when I say power to and with, it's like,
yes.
it's this as opposed to.
Oh, I'm so grateful for you setting that out because it's like now I know what I need to be doing in that 20 minutes. This is not a just a normal, this is not a just a chat. This is not a random chat. This
Mhm.
is, it
You're
needs,
creating the container for the
yeah, and
work.
that needs to be specific
Mhm.
conversation around consent and requests and
Yeah, and if we want
agreement.
it to be a power with
Yeah,
situation where vulnerability is recognized and shame isn't is we know shame's in the room,
yeah,
then power with the reciprocal environment needs to have a container to create that because that model, my client, a coworker, we're
yes,
all expecting the power over dynamic to come in. And so we're going to be retracted and scared. Our nervous systems are going to be on vigilance and prepared for that. So recognizing the shame that you have and the work just internally for you and the people that you're working with and other people's opinions about what you're doing, it has been power over. Like I'm going to let your opinion of me shut me down.
yeah,
Um, the model's expecting you to come in and
yeah.
have power over them because they're vulnerable, or they're feeling vulnerable in whatever way. So yeah, you're just creating the container for power with and power to.
Wow, wow. Thank you.
You're welcome. They're
And
so lucky to have you.
I'll tell them that next time.
Tell them, tell them this waggy woman in the United States said that you're really lucky to have you doing this.
Oh, amazing. Another thing that I have been kind of curious about, and I would love to know if you have had any experience of this, is how I'm using creativity as forming as a little bit of a separator for me. It's giving me the permission to look. Like I wouldn't really be able to just have a situation where I just ask men if I can just like look at them naked. Well, I could,
Mhm.
obviously, but doing a drawing, turning it into a project, creating the creation, the creative process is acting as a kind of, it gives me a bit of distance. It
Mhm.
gives me permission to look. And
Mhm.
I guess I've become much more aware of the female gaze. This is female gaze. I'm using it in a way to say the my gaze as a woman
Yeah.
spent a lot of my life looking down and looking away from and not looking at things and how my creative project is allowing giving me permission,
Mm.
kind of functioning in a really beautiful way.
Mhm.
And I was wondering about just how creativity can do that. I guess people use writing a lot, journaling a lot. I don't know if you have any
Mhm.
experience of that.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. My question always is, it's like, okay, so what need is that meeting for the creativity to be the doorway to that curiosity? Where is the message that you have to have a creative process in order to have your curiosity nurtured? That it so I always ask those questions like why?
Yeah,
So that's always my question. Is like yes, it absolutely is an outlet. It's a permission to look,
yeah,
and recognizing that, yeah, my whole life I've spent looking down or not too direct eye contact. This is an avenue for me that works, and I'm going to enjoy that avenue.
yeah,
So I hear you recognizing that probably comes from a place of shame, or dare I say, even trauma. And
yeah,
I think recognizing that's important, because then we can see how the creative process gives you that permission and satisfaction to feel a certain way, to learn something you want to learn, as opposed to, well, now I need to learn this, or now I need to be a sculptor, or now, like, whatever, like whatever the next, because I haven't gotten there yet is. Um, and so recognizing that, I think, is helpful. But I see this too with business owners, in that if they've started their business from a place of, I would always kind of like a core trauma, like the business idea, or the need to be an entrepreneur, to be always in control or in charge. Um, their business is a place of permission for that. And they get to be creative there because they have power and control over what's happening. And also, I see from the standpoint as a business therapist that a lot of people will do personal development work because of their business and for their business and through their business, that they would have never allowed themselves to do without their business being the catalyst. A lot of people come work with me because they know I was a therapist in my prior career before I started this business, because for the first time in their lives, they're giving themselves permission to attend to their emotional well-being, because they know it's going to impact their business positively. Whereas before, they've never allowed themselves to have that. So I see that kind of happen, with the entrepreneurs and business owners I work with, mostly because it was worth it to risk the emotional vulnerability to let their business be successful, but they hadn't quite given it to themselves. So I kind of see those two things similar. They're not exactly the same, but a similar
yeah,
process of permission.
yeah, 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 definitely. I think it's about, yeah, being permission to look,
Hmm.
basically permission to see what's there. So I
Hmm.
suppose it helps as a practice to
It does.
look
And
straight at
yeah.
something.
And I wonder, like, what younger versions of you are like really satisfied and feel whole because of that permission that you have to look.
Yeah, I think definitely I'm curious, and I do feel quite often this is like little curious me, which is like,
Hmm.
I just get to, I mean, I just want to be, I'm just curious about lots of stuff all the
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
It's like curious to be able to ask questions, you
Hmm. Yeah. And so you're like, here you go. Here's
know.
your outlet. No shame in this game. Go for it.
No shame in this game. Amazing. So, I mean, I love how it can be 1 minute it's like a scary, big, scary thing, and then it's also, I don't know, there's a way that there's permission, finding a way through feels amazing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
It absolutely does. It's the permission, and it's the avenue. It is the acknowledgement of a part of ourselves that has a need, and giving that part of ourselves that opportunity, as opposed to shutting it down. We
Oh,
become more whole when we do that.
yeah. Okay. So it's a process of, yeah, it's kind of like going back and refinding ourselves.
Hmm.
Mm.
Hmm. Yeah, that's why it's fun. When you can see what it is, it's way more fun. It's when you can talk to, like, is your 8-year-old that's being curious today? Like, what do you want to see? What do you want to learn?
Yeah. Amazing. Oh my gosh, is that the time 54?
It is, well, yeah, I have 40,
Yeah, 40.
40-ish. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, okay. You know
Mhm.
what? I got on earlier than you, and
Really, yeah. Mhm.
yeah. Let me just have a little look at my notes. Do you have a kind of couple of pointers about how shame can show up for us around money as well?
Mhm.
Is it the same kind of?
Yeah, I believe that we're in relationships in our life, and I do write about that in my book, and that was kind of like the catalyst for a lot of my work was when I recognized that, um, well, I was already doing some work around money trauma, and then I started to really see how trauma could impact our business, not just our money, and that really it was the relationship dynamic between my business that was really toxic and replicating trauma patterns. Um, and so, yeah, I believe that we're in a relationship with the money. I believe that we're in a relationship with our business. Your art, you're in a relationship with it. That we are working out relationship dynamics all around us. When we're in groups of people, we're in relationship with that group. We're in relationship with each other. And a lot of those, relationship roles and dynamics and patterns that we had growing up can play themselves out again. And so, yeah, I think that
Oh,
when it comes to our money, if we have had experiences where we did not feel safe or secure, or resources were not available, or maybe you had a lot and you got judged by people because, you had a lot of money and wealth and weren't struggling, at least with that. There's a lot of judgments and assumptions that are made about you. It's it then informs how you kind of see yourself, and it can create that shame. And so, I really think that when it comes to money, is starting to recognize, okay, well, first of all, what messages did I kind of download growing up about what money means, my value, and what it's connected to, and start to pick apart some of that. Because if you've had shame, if you've had childhood trauma, you're probably struggling with the way that you value yourself, and so that is then going to impact the way that you earn money and the relationship that you have with it. So yeah, we kind of have to look at those money stories from our growing up years to kind of see like what's impacting us. Because if you struggle with your own value, it's gonna be really hard for you to put a price tag on what you do. That's one of the reasons why people who come out of like these corporate settings and start their own business, or they'll say like, "I was the top 1% earner at Cisco or whatever," and I started my own business and I can barely have a sales conversation. And I'm like, "That's because you were earning money for this person, and now you're having to put a number on your value and your worth, and you're struggling with that because of childhood trauma and shame." So it's really difficult to do that. So, yeah, we always have to examine our relationship with money because it's
yeah.
integral to security and safety. When you think about the world we live in and the way our nervous systems work, money equals safety. So how could it not be influenced by that?
Yeah. Amazing. I love the way you say it's just all relationship dynamics across.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
even with ourselves,
Yeah.
the relationship with ourselves, the relationship with our inner kiddos, as I call them, like they're on your board of directors of your business or your art
Oh,
projects, like, or your, you know, whatever it is that you're doing, they're there and they have opinions about what it is that's happening.
absolutely. Oh, wow. And can I just invite you to talk a little bit about I can see your book in the background,
Hmm.
and I just to see a little bit about for people who are interested and want to know more. Um,
Yeah, so so I've been doing this work for about 10 years now, after being a therapist for 18 years. And um I'm not really an author. I can write, but I'm a reluctant author. I'm a reluctant writer. But I do have this book called How to Love Your Business. I'm laughing at it just because I always imagine like what a process it was to write this book because of my learning difference and all the things that we needed to do to kind of get around it. So I'm so grateful that it exists in the world because it was definitely a journey.
I
Um,
love your story about how I just love the story about how
mhm.
I watched it on your masterclass, and.
Yeah, like then this is what I think is important. When shame is driving the bus, it keeps us from getting the help that we need to do what it is that we want.
Yeah.
And so, getting a ghost editor to help me by asking me questions and like taking the answers and then asking me more questions, and using it from a verbal medium instead of me writing things down. Because by the time I write something down, so much has been filtered out from here to here. You're never going to get the best of me if I'm writing something.
Yeah.
Um, And so really embracing that process with love and support for myself, I think was so healing. Because I really do believe you can heal yourself through your business, through your writing, through your art. Um, but in that book, Olivia really literally just talks about the fact that one morning I woke up in my business and recognized that I had created an abusive relationship with it because of my own past and my, childhood with my really difficult mom. And um, I had no clue that that was even possible, but because of my training, because of where I just happened to be in the world, and I was reading the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which it really is a magical book.
I love that book so
It's
much.
so good.
So
So
good.
good. And I just had this huge aha moment of, oh my God, I love my business, but I don't feel like it loves me in return. I feel like it's beating me up. And no matter what I did, it was never enough. And I had to identify, where have I felt this feeling before? And it was with my mom. Nothing I did was ever enough, ever, ever, ever. And so I had created my business to kind of be a stand-in for her to replicate those trauma patterns. And when I saw that, everything just fell into place for me. And it's been the foundation of the work I've done since then around the intersection of trauma and entrepreneurship, trauma and leadership. All came from that moment. And this book outlines my story. It outlines the stories of clients I've worked with when they have changed the relationship with their business, the exercises that I created that I went through before I started using them on clients. It's kind of fun and whimsical in a really weird trauma way. So, yeah, so it's a really personal book as well as like a business development book.
Amazing. And then I'm also really enjoying your three whys.
Okay, cool.
And Nicole
Yeah.
also has a fabulous masterclass on her website. Did I
Hmm.
get that through your website? Or maybe I
Yeah.
should have done.
Yep. It's on my website. You can download it.
Yeah,
Um,
amazing.
all different ways to kind of approach the understanding that trauma could be impacting your business in some way, your money in some way, the why you're doing the thing that you're
Yeah,
doing.
the
Um,
invisible ways,
mhm,
that you,
mhm.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
Trauma.
yeah,
Room.
they're important.
Yeah,
So yeah,
amazing.
thank you for
Um,
asking.
oh, let me just think if there's anything else. Why do you think shame is so relevant right now? Especially we are regarding, there's many more names for you brought up learning, different styles of
Hmm.
learning, mental
Hmm.
health. We've feel like we're opening it up more.
I think so. I've seen this in my business because when I first started talking about trauma and entrepreneurship, a lot of people around me were like, "Don't use the word trauma; you'll scare people." I had a business coach who said this, and I was like, "Well, we have to call it what it is." And I think that people, because we're more connected than ever, I think people are sharing their lived experiences more than ever. That and now that we have words like shame and small t trauma, like so many people are relieved by this term of small t trauma because they finally can see the experience they've been having has a name and that it actually is trauma. It feels like it to them, but someone's told them it wasn't that. And so I think the more exposure we have to these things, the more people want to have the conversation about it. I think Brene has been um, a catalyst in the conversation around shame outside of the therapy office, which I think has been important. So her work has been, I think, integral to that as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Um, and I think that we're having so many just wild experiences right now that people are getting way more curious about their own internal dialogue and their own internal worth and their nervous systems and somatic therapies out there. People are trying to get connected to their bodies because they're recognizing that their bodies are holding a lot of these traumas and experiences. So I think we're just kind of ripe for this conversation now, and I think less people are willing to be powered overed
yeah,
anymore. And shame
but
is a tool of power.
yeah.
So.
And that word vulnerability, I guess, has been brought in as well. So I don't know,
Mhm.
there just seems to be a bit more willingness to go step in there, not be so scared of that space.
Yeah, I think that so our nervous systems, we co-regulate each other, right? So when you're in the room with your model or when I'm, working with someone, our nervous systems are co-regulating, and the more that we're with people who make us feel or invite us into safety, which is what you're doing by creating the container with your models, the more we have that, then their nervous system says, oh, I might feel a little braver in this space, right? Because someone has invited me into a container. We've talked about it, there's consent. And so the nervous systems were regulating in a healthy way as opposed to a hypervigilant way. And I think more and more of us are doing that. We're finding our people, like people in the LGBTQ, communities, they're finding each other through technology. So they're co-regulating and they're willing to talk about what their experiences are. And so shame, when you shine a light on it, it can't thrive. And so I think we're seeing more and more accessibility to that for people. And that kind of disrupts that power over secretive experience that I think a lot of us have had, for a very long time around, yeah, around that. So I think people are just more open to being vulnerable because there's more spaces for them to be vulnerable in.
Yeah, amazing. And I can relate to that. It's like when you start to hang out with people who make you feel safe,
Hmm.
it's more safe to bring more of, more of yourself. And
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, it's easier to be braver when we have someone in the room who gets it and has is kind of named, what that room's about, so you can make a decision about whether you feel safe there or not, or whether you want to be there or not, and like what the guidelines are, and like all that container building is so helpful to our nervous systems.
yeah. And I mean, I can really relate to, I think about it hasn't even been that long that I've been doing these drawings,
Hmm.
even just a few months, and I feel so much more resilient to people used to say to me the whole time, are you okay? Are you safe?
Hmm.
Are you safe with what you're doing? I'm like, I'm really safe, to be
Hmm.
honest.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I used to get knocked off. I used to get impacted internally
Hmm.
by their responses, and I'd be, I don't know, constantly thinking, what am I doing? And I'm really fine with it now.
Hmm. You're practicing shame resilience. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, and actually even talking to you and making, being public makes a huge difference.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what it's all about.
Amazing. Oh,
Mhm.
Nicole, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. This was fun. I don't always get to talk to artists who are on an amazing journey like you are. So I'm usually talking to a business coach or a leadership coach or a marketer or something like that. So this was really fun. Thank you for inviting
Nice
me.
one. Super, super nice for me too. Thank you so, so much. I'm so
Thanks.
grateful. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.